Okay, now we're going to be talking about spaces, such as personal space, the space that you keep between you and a person you're communicating with. Talk about people who might be invading your space and your reactions to that. Your personal space, again, is the distance that you maintain between yourself and others. And in different circumstances, you'll have different comfort zones when it comes to personal space. Intimate circumstances will be closer, and other less personal, more casual circumstances, then it'll be, or more formal, then it'll be further apart. So personal space is important. Sometimes we'll also be talking about crowding. A sense that that your space is being invaded, that you don't, and that feels uncomfortable. And finally, we'll also talk about how people seat themselves in different circumstances, different groups, and we'll also talk about how the type of activity you're doing relates to the type of seating arrangement that you would tend to choose. So let's talk about personal space. We keep an area around ourselves, a comfort zone, that we don't want other people to be invading. And when people do invade this space, it makes us feel really uncomfortable. Realize this, there are cultural differences when it comes to personal space. In the United States, when we're having a conversation with somebody, I'm not talking about a conversation with a lover, but just a conversation with an acquaintance, let's say. You keep a certain amount of space. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe like 2 feet or something in between yourselves when you are conversing. In other countries, like in the Middle East, for example, it's very common for now. Obviously, we have the patriarchal society over there, but you have, when men are conversing with each other, even just acquaintances, they're often touching, they're often holding hands, even when they are interacting with each other. So the personal space in the Middle East is much closer, much smaller than the personal space in the United States. And I think in Japan, I think even larger. The space is even larger than it is in the United States. So different cultures have different comfort zones that people maintain when essentially interacting with others. But when that space is invaded, whether it's a large space or a small space, you feel discomfort. And as I was saying before, there are certain kinds of scenarios where you actually prefer a smaller personal space. So, for example, intimate circumstances. In intimate circumstances, you actually are fine touching. If you would touch, you interact with touch with your lover, and you keep it, and you keep a close distance, like 18 inches or whatever. Sensory, so basically, you in these kind of circumstances, the personal space is close. In a personal zone, so maybe having a conversation with somebody, like 18 inches to 4 feet, just a couple of feet, 2-3 feet from each other is okay. Having a conversation if you're in a car, talking with somebody, so these are so these are a little bit more casual, less intimate. Social, interaction, maybe a little bit more formal. In this case, maybe requires a little bit greater distance. So like a dinner meeting with somebody. You're not going to get too close with a receptionist, for example, if you coming into an office and wanted to speak with someone there. You don't just get right up close to the receptionist and touch him or her on the shoulder. that would be highly inappropriate. Do you see what I'm saying? So, there's personal space. So in those kind of in that kind of circumstance, the space is bigger. In the public scenario, you've got, for example, you might be giving a lecture, or I may be teaching a class face-to-face. I'm not necessarily going to be sitting right next to my students there. I might be standing up in the front of the class, back a larger distance, more than 12 feet or more. In this case, I'm also speaking more loudly, and in that kind of environment, that's the appropriate personal space. If I got to, getting to more personal, distance, 18 inches to 4 feet, students might seem uncomfortable in that kind of circumstance. Finally, we've got your personal space here. In this case here, you're listening to this lecture. You're in a different location than me. You're listening to my voice, but nevertheless we are interacting. But the personal space is a lot different. It's a lot bigger than 12 feet, and this is a more modern incarnation of personal space in this respect. In that you really are just listening to my voice, so there's a limited amount of information that you're getting from me personally in terms of facial expressions. You're not seeing any facial expression, and so on. In this case, that's the maximum personal space here. So also in this class, obviously you are working with e-groups. You're working with your group members in this class. And your group members, you may never see that person face to face. You may see the video of their introduction, but that's it. But nevertheless, you might still find by the end of the semester that you've developed a very congenial, friendly, close relationship with your group mates. So there may be a very big presence here. You may be, when you do interact, there is, whether you do it by phone or whether you do it by texting or whether you do it some other way, you might find that you develop, there's a great deal of social interaction. But we'll see how it works. So hopefully it does that with your group. When it comes to personal space, there are sex differences in personal space needs. Women tend to prefer a closer distance personal space. They're more likely to touch than men are. Men, are less likely to be touching each other, particularly in Western cultures. But as I was saying before, in Middle East, Latin America, it's a lot more touching, a lot more social contact. Status plays a role as well. For example, if I were to talk to the vice president of my college, I would probably not go up to him and put my hand on his shoulder and say, "Hey, how you doing?" He might, however, might be likely to do that to me. The higher status person tends to be more likely to touch and get close in personal space to the lower status person, but not the other way around. A lower status person is much less comfortable invading the personal space of someone who has a higher status. Now again, there might be some kind of circumstances, some kind of work environments, for example, where the manager and or the supervisor and the employee actually do have a very close relationship, and there may be more closer personal space in both ways. But I would probably even bet that even if they have a close friendship outside of work, that probably within the work environment, there's still that maintaining where the lower status person stays further back away from the higher status person. So the higher status person might come close to the lower status person, but not. But you can kind of see how this interesting dance is developing here, and that reflects that equilibrium model of communication. Is that we want to kind of develop this equilibrium, develop this balance. And there are certain kinds of circumstances in a conversation. You maybe talking about something more personal, where you get closer if you're talking about something like that. And there are other kinds of conversation where you might sit back. So this changes throughout a communication interaction, that the personal space for the various contexts, for the various conversations you might be having, various topics, you might get either closer or further apart. Spatial invasion. This is where you're getting the sense of crowding, where somebody is invading your space. And this is an unpleasant circumstance. And crowding is not the same thing as density. You might live in a big city and be accustomed to being around other people a lot. You may go to bars and be around, crowded bars and just be perfectly comfortable with those kind of environments. And those kind of environments may be very dense. There may be a lot of people, but you don't necessarily feel crowded, because again, maybe that's the environment you expect and you're okay with it. Being crowded just feels as if, the people or person you're interacting with is just invading your space in some way. And you might find that in a crowded bar you're comfortable, but in a room with one other person you might feel crowded, depending on the context here. But being crowded is the circumstance where you definitely feel unpleasant. You feel arousal, unpleasant arousal. You may try to figure out why this person is sitting close to me, and you're wondering what might be going on, and you're aroused, and again you're feeling aroused, you're feeling this unpleasant aversive state, and you're really saying, you're really uncomfortable with this person or people who are invading your space. So clearly, it's something that we don't like, and there's part of the brain that's involved, the amygdala, which is involving like fear and aggression. So when someone gets too close, you kind of get that fight or flight response opening up a little bit there. So it's a pretty it can be pretty dramatic when someone invades someone's space. The density-intensity hypothesis refers to the fact that if you are in a crowded environment, not necessarily crowded meaning like you feel your space is being invaded, but just a large number of people, a large amount of people. If you're in that kind of a circumstance and the environment is pleasant, then you're going to feel intense feelings of pleasure. Okay? So imagine your little kid in the Chuck E. Cheese restaurant, very crowded, very dense. Your child is going to be especially happy in the Chuck E. Cheese. Maybe you're not, but the child will be. And when it comes to an unpleasant circumstance, the density of the situation, the number of people, whatnot, makes it even more unpleasant, so that it just accentuates, it polarizes, it makes it much more intense, whatever feelings you might be having already in that circumstance. The density will just intensify it. Two other factors that are important when it comes to working in crowded places. One is a sense of control. If you have a sense of control over the task you're doing, over your particular space, you feel a lot more comfortable than if you feel a lack of control. So if you feel like this circumstance that you're in is beyond your control, there's nothing you can do about it, you're going to feel a lot more stress. And then finally, and another factor is the interference factor, is that sometimes if you're in such a crowded space, you're keeping on bumping into each other, you're interfering with each other's work. If you're on the phone and you're hearing somebody else on the phone and their voice, it's distracting you. So those crowded places can be very distracting, and it can interfere with the work that you're doing, or having a lack of control and having a great deal of interference in these kind of crowded situations is certainly going to make things unpleasant for you. We also talk about seating arrangements, and this is important when setting up classrooms, setting up offices, setting up conference rooms, etc. But the seating arrangements can be very important in terms of making sure that there are positive interactions between the group members. In a sociofugal seating arrangement, this looks familiar, just like a classroom, right? Where you have the seats facing forward, all facing in the same direction. Really, people in these chairs, people in these seats really are not interacting with each other because they're not facing each other. They're facing forward. They're all facing in the same direction. It discourages interaction. Sociopedal seating promotes interaction. People are facing each other. They're able to talk to each other more easily. And a lot of times classrooms are set up, usually they're set up in the sociofugal setting, but other times they have sociopedal settings for like seminars, in which there's a lot of group interaction expected. For large lecture halls, the only way to do it really, the most common way of doing it is sociofugal seating here. But realize this, that there are different kinds of circumstances where different kinds of seating arrangements may actually be more ideal. If you look at this particular analysis here done by Summer, the different kinds of seating choices for the different kinds of activities that are going to be done. When there is going to be conversation, you want to be close together, being able to face each other, so you corner to corner here, or face to face in a short distance. These are the kind of preferred areas for conversing. For cooperating on a particular task, actually sitting side by side is actually what is considered most comfortable here. They can be cooperating on something, working together on it, just sitting next to each other. Competing with each other, tend to want to be face to face, directly, in a short distance, kind of seeing your opponent right in front of you there. Finally, co-acting here, just sitting across from each other is fine, either close over here, or maybe just on opposite corners here. Just independently working on your thing is this is perfectly okay. So again, you can see how the different kinds of tasks that may be involved, maybe the different kinds of seating arrangements would be needs to be considered for the task that needs to get done.